All right. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you're located. Super excited to introduce Mike and Sean today. My name's Jason. I'll be helping with questions later. Mike, our CTO, and Sean, our SVP of product, going to be talking about job costing. Super excited for this feature and a little deep dive on this new initiative. So without further ado, I'll hand over the reins to Mike and Sean.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I'll start. In case I haven't met you before, I'm Mike. I'm the CTO of LMN. Been here since the get-go and have probably interacted with many on this webinar over the years. At a workshop or over email or at any of the other events that we've attended. Yeah, super exciting. 2023 is going to be a really big year for us. Job costing, which we've talked about and around for years, is here and it's coming. It's taken a long time to get it to a point where we wanted it, which is simple and easy and accurate. But I think you're going to be excited to what we have. And without further ado, I'll introduce Sean, our SVP of product, and let him introduce himself and a little bit about how we got here.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, really excited to be here, as Mike said. Work day to day to really listen to and understand the needs of our contractors. Our whole team is really focused on how we can deliver the product that you all need to thrive and be successful in your businesses. And we know we've got some opportunities when it comes to listening and delivering on those asks. And today is our attempt at bringing some of that to life. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to focus heavily on job costing. We're also going to talk about what's coming in our roadmap and the exciting things that you'll see from us in 2023. One of the things we did earlier this year, and thank you to all of our contractors who responded, we asked for some input on what was important to you. And we got a ton of feedback, and the things that bubbled up were the time app ease of use updates. We'll talk more about that at the end of this webinar. And then the next four things really all factored into job costing. So getting materials into your jobs from your estimates, job costing in general without QuickBooks, vendor bills, and real-time tracking of those materials and equipment. So we're going to talk about all of those things today, and looking forward to getting feedback, getting input from all of you as we go through the next few weeks here. So Mike's going to dive into the details on job costing.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, so we started with a mission. Job costing is something, as anybody who's talked to me over the years will know, it's tricky to get right. Certainly, when I was director of operations for a landscape company years ago, went through a lot of ups and downs when it came to job costing and really getting the numbers the way they needed to be. It's tricky. Your bookkeepers probably are in the best position to understand the costs that are coming in, whether it be payroll or vendor invoices. But most of the time, they lack the information on the job to be able to accurately translate those two. So then there's people that are involved in the job, like the crew leads, who can see what's going in, but they don't have the same information of the exact quantities or the weights of things or how much things even cost. And then there's people in the middle, like account managers or salespeople, project managers, operations managers, that sort of role, which is office, but also some awareness of the job. And in our history, it sort of took all three at some level to really pull job costing together. And that makes things tough to get it right. And then, of course, the most important thing about job costing is making it be simple, but also right. So we set out with that goal. How do we do it in a way that, and all those people may still need to be involved at some level, depending on your company. But how do we do this in a way that is as right as possible with as little effort as possible? We also know everybody's busy, and the last thing you need is a whole bunch of more stuff to do just to figure out a bunch of data that may or may not be right in the first place. So our we had three major missions for the dev and the product team when we started this. One was, how can we make this as automated as possible? How can LMN do the work so that we're not entering? And as we get into especially labor costs and even timesheet entries, you're going to see how we took existing stuff and made the job costing data feed off that, so that you don't actually have to do anything extra in terms of what you're doing today. Next up, we took a look at flexibility. When we talk to contractors, and Sean and his team have talked to a whole bunch, we realize there's a very wide range of how people want to do job costing. There's some people that more or less want a simple level, right? Use my timesheets and let me just say I spent $10,000 on materials just so I have an idea. And then that, from that point of simplicity all the way to something a lot more complex where it's, I want to compare every single material, estimated versus actual, quantity and costs. And we had people on both ends of that spectrum and lots of places in between. So the other mission was to make it as flexible as possible. Let's meet both. Let's make sure we can meet both requirements without adding a whole lot of complexity trying to figure out how. And when we show it to you, I think you'll see how we got there. And then finally, it just has to be simple. For those who don't want to spend a lot of time job costing, then we need to make it work that way. And then for those who want to be super, super accurate and have some more people or time to spend on that, then let's open that door as well. So with those three things being our guiding principles, I'll take us to the next step here. The first part about the job costing, and it's kind of before we even get to job costing, as Sean will tee it up here, goes back to that list that Sean showed of requests from you guys starting in Q2. And one of the big ones was, I'd like my estimate materials to come over to my jobs so that I don't have to add them manually. So what does that mean? Well, right now, for estimates, especially service estimates, the services come over and they bring linked materials along with them. And why that's not enough is because, well, the estimate materials may differ from the linked materials, but also the pricing and the billing type might change. So in order to tackle that, and we'll let Sean will let you demonstrate this here or show the screens, part of the job costing is going to be integration of estimates and jobs, so that the materials that you estimate are the ones going to come over to the job.
So yeah, as Mike was pointing out, and just take a quick step back, I want to talk about some of the experience updates we're looking to make along with job costing. So you'll see right away that there's no more estimates and time in your navigation. You're able to navigate seamlessly from one experience to the next. So if you're in your estimates and your estimate list or your standard estimates, you want to hop on over to jobs, there's no need to go over to time first. You're still going to export jobs the same way as you did before and approve the work areas that go into your jobs. But you can access all of those from the same place. And this is our first step in an updated experience that we hope reduces the amount of time it takes to train and onboard new staff, as well as makes the overall system easier to use. A couple other quick updates I'd like to highlight. Within settings, you can now access all of your settings at one time, so we can quickly come and find where we add users, my timesheet settings, all in one place without needing to first travel to the settings side of the application. So as we jump into job costing, we're going to find that within our jobs. So once I've exported a job to time, or once I've exported a job, I'll come into my job list. We've got a design build job that's in progress, Anderson Backyard Patio and Plantings. We want to find out what's going on with that job. As Mike had mentioned, first thing you'll notice is my materials and my equipment. Before we dive into job costing, all those materials have come over from my estimate. So I can see my materials, I can see my equipment, I can see my other costs that were in my estimate. And like before, I can also add materials to this job. We all know jobs change once they're in process. Things need to be added, so I can still add materials directly into the job, but those will be in addition to the materials that I've estimated. That way, when we come on over into looking at our job costs, we're able to see the materials you've estimated as well as the ones that you did not. So quick overview from a job side. You're going to see, this job is 80% in progress. So, we've set this manually where, hours sometimes don't always line up to how far you are along with the job. nor number of days, nor where you are in the schedule. So when you're talking to your crews and you're finding out what's going on, you can put a quick gut feel in here of how far along you are in the job and use that as a basis for comparison. So for this job, we're about 80% the way through, and we can see we've now invoiced $22,000 of our estimated $30,000 in revenue. And how do we get revenue in here? Just by creating those invoices. So once those invoices are created for the job, they'll start showing up as revenue for your job cost. And from there, we're going to really drill into all the different aspects of the job costs along the way. Also, not to worry, your old scoreboard is still there, and you can take a look at it if you want to see the traditional dial. But if I want to find out what's going on with labor first and foremost, we can see at a glance, right? I've estimated 250 hours. My actuals are running roughly in that 80% range, and my costs are in line with where we should be, where we are for the job. We can already see a little leading indicator that materials might be out of whack. We'll take a look into those details. But I can dive into my tasks now for labor and see where my hours are on each task and see the associated cost. So the initial question might be, how are we getting to that, dollar cost, where today we just are tracking hours? Well, I'm glad you asked. We need to understand the wage costs for workers in order to get there. We have wages in the budget, we have category wages in your estimate, but in order to be accurate from a job costing side, we need the specific wages for each employee. So if you notice, it's calling out that I've got a couple action items to deal with. And we know job costing is complex. There are things you need to do to make it accurate. We're trying to be as helpful as possible. And you'll find those items we think you need to take care of here up in action items. So if I take a look, one of the things I need to do for this job is update the wage costs for 5 of my staff members. So if I open that up, I can see, I don't have wage costs in for the people that have clocked in and out on the timesheets for this job. So I can go in, jump in, take a look at the wage costs here for Priscilla. And if she's hourly or salary, we have calculators for both. But what I need to do is come in and take a look at an effective date. So if I want to go back and historically put in wage costs, I just need to put each raise or each incremental pay change into the system, put the hourly pay in. Then from your budget, we're going to pull the labor burden, the expected overtime, and we're going to calculate a wage cost for you. And you just add in the wage costs over time for each employee. And while this might be a little bit of setup work, and it might take an hour or two to get done, what it'll also allow you to do is see historically all the costs for anything you've logged in time since you started using LMN. So by going in and backfilling this information for your staff, we're able to pull those costs directly into the job. So you can see then the costs associated with labor. Now let's take a look at this task. So I've got backyard gardens and planting going on. What's happened there? Where did those actuals come from? Well, I've got a timesheet that's been submitted. I've actually got 4 of them, and that's my 40 hours and close to $1,000. And I've got this temp labor for plantings added. So that's a manual adjustment that we added. We pulled in some labor on a temporary basis. They weren't clocking in and out through the time app. We just paid them cash. So we wanted to capture those costs so that they're associated with the job and our job costs are accurate. But we're big believers in the need to make time tracking as simple as possible. But this might have been estimated from a number of different work areas. So, I've got my maintenance crew estimated from my beds work area in my estimate, my plantings work area in my estimate, and now we've simplified that down on the job side to backyard garden and planting. So that way we can estimate at the level that we want, but when it comes to tracking and job costing, we're going to ask our crews to track in just to the tasks that they need. And I know a lot of you will simplify this all the way down just to a job level task, and that's fine. What you'll see then is all the actuals logged for that one task, and you'll see all your labor rolled up from all the different areas you estimated combined into that task if you just go in and merge your work areas together when you create your job. How do I get that manual cost added in? Really pretty simple. You just open up backyards, garden, and planting. I'm going to get some more details here. I see my hours and my cost. I see the build of timesheets. Now let's pretend like I didn't have this temporary labor. I'm just going to come in and add a cost. Here I can add details. I can give it a title. I can capture the hours and the hourly cost. Now, if this was something different, like a bonus or anything else, I don't have to enter hours here. If there's a credit, I can make it negative. But I put in a little bit of detail and I just hit save, and then I get that manual entry. And now not only do I have automatically all the costs coming in for my timesheets, I can quickly make adjustments for anything extra that might have shown up, which really comes into effect when we're talking about materials and equipment. So I'll pass it over to Mike to chat about materials.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, maybe you can get materials on there. I'll dive into that. And just so we're clear, because I know we're showing a job here, but once you set up your wages for staff, they'll be set up for all jobs. That won't be something you have to do on a job-by-job basis. They'll be permanent. So it's a one-time set those wages up, and those will cascade to every job from then on. Now into materials. So materials are one of the trickiest things to job cost because they come in from so many places. And also because people have very different ways of doing materials. So in order to make it flexible, and by flexible, I mean, hey, I just want to say $12,000 worth of plant material went to this job. Great, we got to make it work for that. We also have to make it work for the people that take 60 plants and match them one-to-one with the estimate so they can figure out exactly estimated versus actual on each material. So we built it so it can do both. The first and most common way, or at least the most accurate way to enter material costs is going to be from vendor bills. So vendor bills is a brand new concept in LMN as part of job costing. So it's one of the things we'll be launching in addition to this, and something we haven't had before. So a vendor bill allows you to enter, exactly like it says, a bill from your vendor. So your vendors will come from your list. You can add them to your CRM app. In fact, you can import them from QuickBooks even easier. So they'll be in there in your CRM app. And then you just make a bill from your vendor exactly like you got it. Now that bill could be summarized by you, so you could just take the total and allocate that to a material, or that bill could be itemized by you. So you could go through each and every item and break it down or allocate it by quantity and by cost so that you get the precision there. If you can pull up a vendor bill now, we'll take a look at what that looks like.
Sure. So as Mike said, adding a vendor bill is a pretty straightforward process, but we understand that different contractors operate in different ways. So oftentimes when building your vendor bill, your accounting team is going to be adding the bills in, and then somebody else is going to allocate them to the job. So we've set it up so it can be taken in parts. One of the things we've done here is integrate with the time app. So if your crews take pictures of receipts in the job or in the timesheet, you're able to bring those in. So really quick example here. I'm going to pull from timesheet. Say I've got a Home Depot receipt that came in from my crew. I want to quickly capture that vendor bill and allocate it to the job. I can bring that receipt in, and then I'm going to go over and we're going to store and keep that image tracked for you for record keeping purposes. And in the future, we'll talk about it more, but we'll be helping by scanning those bills into the system and trying to automate some of this data entry. That won't be available at initial release, but we are hoping to bring that forward sometime next year. So here when I'm adding the line items, we just want to match whatever that receipt or bill is. We're going to come in, we're going to pick our materials, we're going to add the items, and you're just going to build that bill just the way it's presented. Now this is where I can just save and close if I'm on the accounting team and I've got the bill in the system, or maybe we've got some interns who are helping us get all this data and tracking done. You can come in and add those items. When it comes time to allocate these to the jobs, I can open this bill and I can go over to allocate, and I'm going to see, hey, all the items that are on this bill that I want to pull into the job. So I'm going to pick the job, and here we know that, hey, our bills might be associated with multiple jobs. So you can split the allocation into multiple jobs or just assign it to one. But I'm going to pick that job that we're working on. I'm going to partially allocate my materials. I bought some for some repair work for another job, so I just over purchased here a little bit. They're going to go to 2 jobs. But right now I'm just worried about allocating to the Anderson backyard and patio. I'm going to go through and I'm going to allocate all my other materials. So my planting soil and my outdoor grill that I purchased have all been added and allocated. And when we save and close this, those entries are going to be pushed over into the job cost. So now when I am back in my job costing view, I can take a look at those materials and I can see that, hey, they came from vendor bills. I can take a look at the detail. And so for this bill or for this material, I'm able to see all the vendor bills that it was purchased on for this job. So we're able to quickly get a view at the costs for each material or rolled up costs from my vendor bills.
Perfect. So vendor bills highly preferred for job costing because you got your quantity so clearly indicated, you've got your cost, which is precise, and again, it tracks everything you purchased. So if you did happen to purchase extra, sometimes it's for other jobs, or sometimes it's because you've got to purchase more square feet than you actually install on the ground because you've got cuts and you've got waste. Your vendor bills make sure that it captures the entire quantity rather than say foreman feedback, which may capture the quantity or may just capture what they used on site. That said, we'll get to how foremen track costs in a second. So that's the vendor bill portion. And vendor bills can be used for materials, but it's the exact same process for subcontractors, for equipment rentals, anything you purchase from a vendor, you would use a vendor bill for. And so no matter what the type is, it'll apply the same. Now, the other major way to get costs in there for a material is an inventory adjustment. So you've got stuff at the yard or you've got stuff in your shop, and now you take that to site. So we have to have a way to do that. So just like Sean showed you with the manual entries for labor, you've got manual entries for materials as well. It takes just a couple of seconds. All you need to do is pick the material or even just go to the materials section. You don't even have to do an individual material if it's faster for you. You go there, you can enter a total quantity. You can enter just the cost if you want. But again, just a quick note about mulch from inventory gone to this job or salt from inventory or anything like that. And you can allocate that stuff from your yard to the job so that you capture that cost as well. And then the third way to enter material costs would be from timesheets. So currently today, you've got a process in time where your foreman can tick off that, hey, we used 4 bags of fertilizer or 10 yards of topsoil. It's a great tool for bulk materials. It's tough to do all your job costing, and I know some companies out there do this. It is tough to do all your materials from job costing because, again, your foremen have limited information. There are substitutions. There are cost obscurities that they don't necessarily know, right? They make it a packing slip for a material rather than an invoice, and so that makes it challenging for foremen. That said, there's a lot of good reasons foremen can help with the job costing process. So any bulk materials, for example, we load up the truck in the morning with salt or fertilizer or mulch or soil, and then as they go to several jobs and disperse it, there's nobody better to tell you how much material went to those jobs. So it uses the exact same process that we have today. If your foremen on a timesheet are marking down that they used topsoil and they're marking down that they had so many yards to that job, that gets inserted here into job costing automatically for you. Back to what we said at the beginning. You don't have to do anything there. The only thing you want to choose on this job is, hey, I want to count my foreman material counts as a job cost, or I don't. Because if you're going to do that in inventory, you don't want to do it both. You'll double count it. So all you need to do is choose whether you want to count it or not. And all those timesheets, material, and it could be even equipment, anything you track on a timesheet will come over here for job costing for you. Next up, we've got equipment to deal with. And equipment, we've tried to make just as simple as possible. So on the equipment, any equipment you've used for your estimates will automatically come over to your job for you. And now there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could have your foreman track their equipment every day, which again, we're trying to reduce complexity for the foreman. But if you want to do it this way, you absolutely can. You could also come in here and enter it every day if you wanted to, for example, an operations or an account manager. But we've also made it simple enough that at the end of the job or at the end of the week, you simply can come in here and update the number of days you use that equipment for, and it will automatically create an entry for you. So for example, here, if I just tap that 5 days and enter one, it will look at what it was before and what it is after your adjustment and automatically create a manual adjustment for you. And the important part of that is it makes it really easy for you to just type in a total days but it also creates an entry in the background so that if you're ever wondering like, well, how did this get to 12 days or who wrote this, you'll see all the adjustments that were made historically so that you can A, do it quickly, but also B, have the peace of mind that if there is a problem or something doesn't look right, you can look back at it and see those adjustments over history. So it makes equipment costing very simple. We've also got subcontractors and other, which are exactly the same as materials, no further explanation there. Again, typically vendor bills, but also managed through inventory adjustments or a manual adjustment. And then the last, but not to be overlooked, piece of job costing is overhead. And so overhead, to make it super simple, when you bring in an estimate to a job, the overhead that estimate was counting on recovering is also going to come over for you as a manual entry. Now, that could change, or you could create a job without an estimate. So in addition to that, you've got the ability, again, to do manual adjustments to your overhead as well. So maybe this job went long and you want to add more overhead to the job, great, you can do that as well. Maybe you just created this job from scratch without an estimate, and so you need to add some overhead to it, you can do that. But it will bring over the overhead from the estimate, so you'll have a really good starting point without having to do anything again, all set up for you. And then Sean, why don't you review the top tiles and show what the summary looks like.
Yeah, and all of this detail is really there so you can understand what's working and what's not on your jobs. So for this job, we can see we're trending pretty well on a labor side. Materials are running over and we're not yet done with the job, some concerns there. Overarchingly, we want to see where we're ending up. So we can see from a net and gross profit side, what we've estimated where we're currently sitting. As this job hasn't fully invoiced yet, we're going to pick up more revenue, that profit's going to go up. We can see where we're sitting from a cost side already. We've really got to bring our labor in on time here in order to hit our numbers for this job. But when this job is complete and closed out, I'll then have a really quick view at my revenue, my profit, and my costs for this job. And you can see that top line at a glance. So not only can I track my job along the way, but I can understand what's going on at the end of the jobs and see how my job stacked up, which will be really important when we talk about kind of cross-job reporting, which we're expecting to bring second half of next year. And one thing to just quickly add as well, Mike talked about the ability for materials, equipment, subs to track both in bills and on timesheets. If you want, you can still track on timesheets, but not include those in the costs. So you have an opportunity there to potentially do some double counting. So we can track vendor bills and timesheets, or you can disable that and track vendor bills only. What that lets you do is still capture usage of materials and time, but not allocate costs that way. So you get to see what your crews think they're using, but you also just get to use bills for cost purposes, which gives you kind of a best of both worlds type scenario if you want to do it that way. But again, the whole time we're looking at trying to make the system as flexible as possible. Mike, any last thoughts before we move on to what's next?
No, I think that's good. We'll go into next, Jack. We'll go into next, and then if you're at this point and you've got some questions, feel free to submit them there. They'll take the questions, and we'll have a period at the end where we'll go through all the detailed questions with people.
So what we wanted to do is spend a little bit of time talking about what's coming, timing of all of this that you're seeing, and also what's next. So first and foremost, tonight we're actually rolling an update, which we're really, really excited about. And there's three things in that. One, a smart rescheduling feature for one-time jobs. So right now, a lot of our contractors are planned out 3, 4, 5 months, 6 months, 18 months. And as we know, if you've got that all scheduled back to back in your calendar and you need to move one of your jobs, you've got quite an ordeal to move each of the subsequent jobs into the right days. So what we've done is enable a feature that lets you move that first job, and where conflicts arise, it'll subsequently reschedule the jobs behind that. So it'll just push your schedule out as well as fill any open days for you. And so that kind of 30-minute readjustment of your schedule happens in seconds. So you can check out that feature, let us know how it goes. There's also an undo button in case it didn't adjust the way that you wanted. you can make some finer grain control. One of the big things we've been asked about time and time again is for more integrations. So we're starting there on a Zapier side, and that beta is launching with our release. And it's a closed beta where we need you to request participation. And really anybody who wants to participate can. You just shoot us an email to support@GoLMN. Let us know that you're interested in participating, and we'll send you a key in order to enable that. And those instructions will be coming out next week. And initially, we're letting you integrate with a number of things. So for those that aren't familiar, Zapier lets you do integrations with just about any platform, be it like a MailChimp or Gmail or a text platform, and tie pieces of software together without using code. So initially, from LMN, we'll let you understand things, get notified about things like new estimates, new to-dos or communication notes, new CRM contacts that were created, or look for contacts, create a new contact, create a new to-do and communication note. So what this helps you do is manage that workflow of communication from front to back. And it's just our start with this integration. So over the next 12 months, we'll be building out different areas that you can access data or push data into LMN. And what we really need to understand from all of you is what are those areas and how do you want to integrate with LMN? And we'll be building this API over time. So really excited to get this into your hands. And then lastly, customer-facing emails have all been revamped. A new professional looking email template for everybody to see. So any customer-facing email that goes out will have a new updated template that's really exciting, really professional, really helps with communication, and is our first step on the path to letting you customize those emails at different parts of the process. So those are all coming out today and available tomorrow after the maintenance window. So job costing that we were just talking about, really 3 big pieces: getting your materials into your jobs, job costing itself, and that updated navigation and experience design that you saw. All of those will be coming in Q1 next year. So we'll get them out to you before the season so that you can track your costs and start to experience job costing more holistically, all the things we demonstrated today. But that's not all that's coming from us for job costing. Next year will be a big focus on job costing and future enhancements. So syncing bills to QuickBooks, as Mike described, we expect to be coming later in Q1 or early Q2 as soon as possible. Job costing analytics, so being able to report across our jobs, being able to see by crew or by job group, how are my jobs performing and how are we doing, is such a critical piece. We're expecting later in Q2. So we wanted to get first to you the job costing, be able to track those information, see how your jobs are doing, but you'll also see some really advanced reporting coming from us as far as job costing analytics goes. It'll just come a little bit later in the year. Building on vendor bills, we want to bring the front end of that cycle in, material orders and purchase orders, extending that functionality. And we also want to make that entry of vendor bills more efficient for you. So later in the year, being able to scan those bills, start to automatically populate them, reduce the amount of data entry you need to do, and really use LMN as your system of record for those bills, and then just sync them all over to QuickBooks. We think that'll be the best way for contractors to move forward, because that way you can capture the bill itself and get that into your accounting system. You can do all the allocations to the different jobs that are associated with that bill right in LMN. Then you can kind of separate those concerns. A lot of really exciting things coming from us next year as well. Some things that we're working on don't currently yet have launch dates. We're trying to be as transparent as possible. When we know things, we'll tell you. When we don't know things, we'll tell you that too. So visit reminders and notifications are another big thing that we've been asked for, and that is in the works and on the radar for next year. We led off by saying the most requested thing were time app updates and ease of use. So that's probably one of the biggest major features we'll be working on next year. And while it won't arrive until Q3, Q4, we're really taking a hard look at that. We're talking to contractors and crews now to really understand what's working, what's not, what additional features you want to see. So we'd love to hear from you. One of the things also I should have mentioned with this release that'll go tonight is your ability to get into this roadmap and portal. So under help, you'll find a roadmap and requests link, and you can come in and you can tell us what's important to you. So here I can come in and I can say, hey, time app upgrade is really critical to me, and I can provide feedback on what that is. You'll be logged in automatically through your Element account, and you can just send us feedback on what's really important. And we're hoping to get a lot more input into the system and talk to a lot more contractors about what's key. So we also have things like customizing emails, some updates to estimating. We know it's such an important feature for all of you. We want to keep improving it, keep making it better, and make sure we have the industry best estimating software for many years to come. And then getting you a better view of what's going on with your customers in our CRM 360 dashboards. So I invite you all to explore our roadmap as it comes out. You'll find under consideration a whole bunch of things that we've heard from contractors that we'd like to know more about and understand your priority of. So you can go in and take a look at all the things we're considering and let us know how important they are to you, and or other ideas that you might have. Now, not to worry, if you've talked to your account people or your support people in the past, we've captured all of those ideas. You don't necessarily need to tell us again, you're welcome to. But we do have a long list of all those things. We're just trying to make the communication more transparent so you can see what's going on. And if you have thoughts or ideas, you're able to submit them here as well. So that is our roadmap. And without further ado, we will take some questions if Jason was able to organize some.
All right. Yes, definitely lots of questions. All right. By far, probably the most popular question I've got here, will vendor bills export? If you can maybe just reiterate this one, will vendor bills export to QuickBooks? Is it both ways, just one way? A lot of questions on that one.
Mike, you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll take that one to start for sure. So a little bit of both ways, but not entirely. And so I'll go through it. Yes is the short answer. It won't be there right on go live, but it's our first project after go live. So it'll probably follow it up within just a couple of weeks. It's not going to be a long cycle. We'll get job costing out there, and then very shortly after we'll have the QuickBooks sync. It will absolutely sync to both QuickBooks desktop and online, so it'll support both. And it will likely be more of a push than a two-way sync. So there will be some two-way. We're going to bring, for example, all your vendors into LMN from QuickBooks so that you don't have to key them in. That's going to save a lot of time. And on the vendor bill side, it'll push out. Doing a two-way sync gets super complicated because if you were to do things like deleting or adding items on the vendor bill in QuickBooks, it makes it harder to do the allocation correctly, and you could actually have changes in the allocation on the LMN side. That said, we're not ruling it out. It will start as a one-way sync, but if we come across a bunch of use cases where it's going to make sense to do it two ways, and it will continue to function for LMN job costing, then great.
Awesome. So this question's come up a few times as well. Will you be able to adjust pay rates job by job? So if you have one job that you pay normally to someone and another job is prevailing wage as an example, is there going to be any sort of way to adjust those?
Yeah, so we have something called payroll codes on jobs, and we use those payroll codes in order to push those employee records to payroll to pay them accurately. So we can use the same payroll codes to drive wage costing as well. So employees can have a regular payroll code. They could also have, for example, a snow payroll code or a prevailing wage code.
Perfect. Couple questions on this one too. Does this mean that Element's going to start tracking inventory, or does this mean that it will track inventory?
I'll run with this one again. So in the beginning, does it mean it can track inventory? Well, we'll absolutely have the ability to enter vendor invoices to inventory, right? To a non-job. So it'll accept any kind of vendor invoice. It doesn't have to be allocated to a job. And then obviously with the inventory adjustments, you can you can track stuff going out. For go live, probably not a inventory management system. That said, once we're live and people are using it and people are tracking vendor bills coming into inventory and going out, and they'd like to see that evolve into a more inventory tracking system, then absolutely will. It will not be part of go live, but it's an open book for people if that becomes a big need after. And again, we're really trying to stay focused on that user request list. The idea here and the idea over the next couple of years will be to put out stuff as early as responsibly possible. And you know, when that comes to job costing, it means let's get job costing out there as soon as the critical components are ready. And then we'll build on those critical components as more people come in and say, hey, we'd like it to go to inventory, or we'd like we need it to go to QuickBooks. We obviously know that one right off the bat. But as people make demands and requests for enhancement of those features, then we'll layer those on the critical features rather than waiting forever to launch a critical feature, trying to get everything under the sun in there. So the short answer, if inventory is a hot topic item, sure, we can do that.
And we had a couple questions actually just looking to confirm where to find if they want to vote for specific features. So that'll be released tonight just to confirm, and you'll find that under the Get Help section within LMN. So just to confirm that. So Mike, Sean, I've also got a question here from Eric. Does the materials that you're showing that you added, did they come over from your material catalog?
That's a great question that they didn't necessarily clarify. Yes, so all of this will drive from your price list and your material catalog. So those materials that you saw line item by line item in the job are all rolled up to that level. So when I estimate, I'm going to estimate a material into multiple work areas so that I'm tracking my profitable estimates and costing accurately or estimating accurately rather. When I create that job and it comes on over into the job, that material is going to roll up to my material catalog level, because that's how we're going to buy and that's how we're going to track, right? We're not going to necessarily track that by work area. So those are all at that level. Your old time materials will still be there, and they'll be available in that price list. As we said, we removed like time as a separate navigation. So you can find your old time materials in there, but those materials will now come into your price list. So for your maintenance and service jobs, you know, we'll start using just the exact materials as Mike mentioned. When you create a job, those very specific materials will show up in your job in order to be tracked. And we're going to now track against what you estimated rather than separate materials. So we've kept your separate materials, so nothing will break, nothing won't work. All of that will still be wired up and still working like it is today. But as you create new jobs, we'll start to bring over those specific materials into those new jobs.
Great. All right. We've had a lot of questions about price with the job costing feature. Does this mean that there's going to be a price increase for the job costing feature?
Now, job costing will be included in the existing packages, so there'll be no price increase for job costing per se. Maybe some more advanced features in the Pro Plus, but it will not, to either package, instantiate any kind of price increase.
All right, I'm sure people will be happy about that one.
Yeah.
Is there going to be a way that this will help companies that pay staff via piecework at all, or is there any way to account for incentive, like crew incentive plans in job costing?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I mean, Sean showed it there, but you've got your timesheets, but we know that's not how everybody pays, right? You could have subcontractors, you could have day labor, you could pay people cash, or you could pay people piecework, which is a great question. So yeah, you can use those manual entries to enter wage or labor costs for piecework. So if you want to do it by square feet, great, you could do that. And that gets you around having to use timesheets. Again, goal was to be flexible and make sure that no matter how you're doing something, there's a way to get it done in job costing.
And from an incentive program side, first and foremost, you know, job costs will give you an accurate view of what's going on with your jobs in order to provide better incentives. And then if you do want to go allocate those incentive costs back to your job, you can do that as well. You know, we'd recommend putting that into the other category so that you can capture those costs and associate them with the job, and keep tracking that way. And also keep your labor costs clean, but you can just go in and put in those incentive payouts really quickly with a top line manual adjustment.
All right, great. Will there be a way to spread out overtime costs to an average across jobs, or is there any way to account for more overtime later in the week and adjust jobs from that sort of perspective?
Another really good question there. So one of the flaws of, I would call it a flaw, of the QuickBooks method of job costing is that it's a flaw and a benefit, right? It takes the exact payroll that you spent on that job and allocates it to the job. It's great for prevailing wage, the example we talked about earlier. It's not so good for overtime, because what that means is the jobs at the end of the week end up bearing all the burden of the overtime cost. And that job ends up looking way over on labor, even though it's only, it might be ahead on hours, it might be doing great, but just because it happens to fall on Friday afternoon, it's the one that gets stuck with the overtime burden. So the LMN's wage cost will be a blended wage cost. So that wage cost will include the wage, the taxes, the workers' comp, those things, and an overtime factor. So there's a calculator on the staff wage screen that will allow you to build in an overtime factor. And what that'll do is then spread that wage, or the cost of overtime, I should say, out across all the jobs, effectively averaging them. Now, you don't have to do it that way, but to answer that question, that's how that works.
Great. We've had a few people just want to clarify as well. So if they're taking inventory from the shop, so would they enter this as a vendor bill, or is that one of the adjustments that you showed?
Yeah, that'd be the second adjustment. I mean, you could create your shop as a vendor bill, but we built, and that'll work. But we built the manual adjustment, or an inventory. We were going to call it inventory adjustment to be perfectly clear, but there are other examples where inventory adjustment doesn't fit, right? Maybe you are taking a piecemeal and applying it there. So the adjustment would be the fastest and easiest way to take something from your shop inventory and do it to a job. But heck, if you want to create yourself as a vendor and use vendor bills, you could do that as well. It'll work.
All right, and we've got David asking, is there a way to allocate for freight charges and or fuel?
Yeah, same answer would apply there too. So a freight charge could be part of a vendor bill, right? And so you just add it to that. You could also just, if it's your own trucks and you want to apply a circumstantial freight charge, as in an internal one, you can do that as well. Same thing, the manual, that manual cost allocation really opens it up to give you all kinds of flexibility. And you can apply that cost to a specific material, or you could just apply it to the job materials in general. So however you want to tackle that here, it'll work.
Great. And we've actually had a few questions asking about training. So leading up to this update with a lot of changes to the UI, is there plans to update our training? And maybe I can probably assist there too, but
yeah, I don't mind jumping in there either. So yeah, 100%. I think starting in December, you'll start to see a lot of communication rolling out from us about the upcoming update. Better clarity around timing and training materials to prepare. We want everybody to know what's coming ahead of time. We don't want there to be any surprises, so that's why we're starting this now. If you've got questions, you want to see the prototype, you want to dive in more, and you happen to be at Equip Expo, swing by the booth. We'll be there next week. We'll have the prototype with us, and we can talk through and answer any questions. But our goal here, yes, is to make the training and the information will all start to roll out more in earnest in December, setting you up for success ahead of the changes and the rollout. We also have taken a lot of time to talk to contractors behind the scenes, understand how the navigation works for them. Is it easy to understand? And we're really trying very hard to make things more intuitive. So hopefully things will be where you expect them to be, and we'd love your feedback along the way. So just to reiterate what Mike had set up front, next year you're going to see a lot of updates from us that are really focused around that experience and ease of use. We want it to be easier for you to use LMN. We want to reduce the time it takes to do redundant things. So you'll see a lot of effort from our side on all of that, and we're really, really excited about some of the things that we have planned. There'll be a few unexpected things as well. So you know, we'll work very hard with you all to understand what's really priority. So we're looking forward to feedback on the roadmap and other requests that you have. We also really just want to say thank you to all the contractors that have submitted things for the past 18 months, who have talked to us over the past 12 months about job costing and given us their insights. It's been invaluable to get us here, and without you and all the input we get, we certainly wouldn't be here. So thank you.
And I'll just echo Sean's sentiment. There's a lot of questions about what about this feature, what about that feature, and as far as updates go, the new product board that Sean was showing there, 100%, that launches tonight. Get in there, vote for your favorites, submit the ones that you want to see. That's honestly the best way. Seeing a lot of questions just for lots of feedback around different features. And sorry, I won't be able to get to all of them, but we do have some people asking about the Zapier integration. So if people do want to get involved with that, is there like next steps that they should take, or can we give a little bit more information there?
Yeah, just submit your information to support. We'll get you on the list. Everybody who wants to participate can. I did want to call out that, so between now and the end of the year, we'll be running the beta, and anybody can participate. That Zapier integration will be a Pro Plus feature, so you'll need the Pro Plus subscription to utilize it come the new year. But in the interim, we just really want to get as much feedback as we can. I see a question here about kind of how quick that integration runs. It's really up to like your Zapier subscription. You can pull those triggers by the minute, by 15 minutes. So it'll be as real time as necessary. But you know, oftentimes there you're kind of paying more for Zapier for faster, more frequent things, which you don't need to know like by down to the minute. So really, that's as real time as you need it to be. But subsequently, so you'll submit that you want to be included. We'll have an email that goes out next week explaining how to get access. So we'll add you to the system. That email will go out. You'll go in and create a Zapier account, and you'll put in your authentication key that we'll send you via email as well. And then you'll have access to the API, and you can start using it right away. So between now and the end of the month, those communications will be coming out, and you can start running those integrations. And then when we open the release next year, you'll just go into settings. There's a Zapier integration, and you can enable it or disable it, get the key that you need, you know, and it's really, really pretty straightforward to get set up. So for the next couple months, we wanted to work with contractors who are really engaged and wanting to see that. We want to know, are we giving you the data you need? Is there other data that you need? How are you trying to use it? So this one really for us, the more feedback you can help us with, the better. We'll make sure we're putting out the data that you need to create the integrations that you want. So we'd love a ton of help participating. And if you requested participation ahead of this, we've got about 20 contractors already signed up. We should have you on the list already. So if you've talked to your account people or Mike and myself or Chris recently about this, we've already got you on the list. If you want to double check, you're welcome to, but we have captured all of those as well. And so if you don't see an email by the end of next week, drop us a line and we'll get you included.
Just piggybacking on that for a second, same goes with requests. So I know some of you, like as Jason said, like what about this and what about this? Just to give you some sense, I believe we're at about like sort of 850 requests right now. It could even be a little bit larger, unique requests in our product board, which is a great thing. So thank you to everybody for sending them in. But if you're looking at one specific one, it might be number 6 and it might be number 76, and it's hard to tell. But the product board that we're launching, we're really hoping plays an instrumental role in that. One thing I hope you take away from this is when we did that development survey back in Q2, we stack ranked all the items by popularity and weight. And if you look, we'll have 7 of those 8 items accomplished by that same time next year. And we continue to, or we want to continue, we're committed to continuing that type of development moving forward. So as the things you get requested and move up the list, those are the things we're going to focus our attention on and bring it to you. So we'll let the masses speak. Yeah, if you've got a request and you're wondering on it, we'll be using that that product board integration now to keep you abreast of what we're doing, but also allow you to become a participant in that whole process.
Great. And just, I know we've got 5 minutes left here, so a couple more questions. Some people asking about the Zapier integration too. So while we're on that subject, is there like a use case that we can kind of share, like a popular use case that people might use Zapier for those that are less familiar?
Sure, I created a sample for myself with a MailChimp account. So a CRM tag became a category of a mailing list in MailChimp. And as I add leads to LMN, those leads get added to MailChimp and they're bucketed by tag so that I could go into MailChimp, for example, and send all my snow customers an email out of MailChimp. That's a single idea. Another one, if you're using like a more advanced CRM tool like a HubSpot or a Salesforce, and you wanted to track an estimate as an opportunity, you can do those types of things as well, where the value of the estimate comes over as like a sales opportunity in those external systems. And then in LMN, as that estimate changes, for example, customer goes online, approves the estimate in LMN, Zapier will automatically recognize that, as Sean said, could be real time, could be within 15 minutes, depends on your package, but in a very short amount of time, we'll detect that, okay, that estimate's had a change, and then we'll kick that change over to HubSpot or Salesforce or Nutshell or the 50 other CRM packages that are integrated into Zapier. There's thousands of applications that integrate with Zapier, and maybe you just want a Slack message every time an estimate gets sold, so you can do that too. It can really lots of cool things you could do with it.
Yeah, and similarly, you can complete that workflow where, hey, if an estimate changed to sold and you want to automatically then go and create a to-do for your operations to get that job scheduled, you can do that too.
Great. And we've had a few questions also about job costing. Is that going to be available for maintenance folks too? So people primarily working in maintenance, are they able to use the job costing feature as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Everything that was in there today will work for maintenance. Where it's really going to start to shine in terms of a difference from design build will be those analytics, or those reports, or those roll-up summaries. Maintenance, obviously, a little bit different game with a more, so in design build, you're more looking at job progress and estimated and actuals as a way to put it all together. Maintenance, perhaps more seasonal, but 100% job costing. Although we used a design build example, 100% it'll be available for maintenance just as well, and snow and fertilizing and anything that you do that may be outside design.
Great. So I put a message in the chat. I know we're almost at time here, so there's been a lot of questions. If we haven't been able to make it to your question, we will be following up with everyone after this. Real quick, Mike, do you want to just reconfirm when we're expecting this to be released? That's come up a couple times as well, and maybe we can kind of close out on that.
Yeah, as Sean mentioned, Q1 will be the release date. Now, our target is very, very early Q1, and it's unlikely it's going to slip much past that. So we expect to see it early Q1. But to Sean's point too, that he mentioned there, it won't be the end of job costing in early Q1. We'll have more updates shortly thereafter, layering in things like the QuickBooks integration very shortly after. And then things like scanning, automatic text scanning of invoices. So you could literally just scan an invoice. It'll take that text from the scan and create an invoice for you. Those will be projects later in the year, and perhaps inventory. We get a lot of feedback over that. Maybe that's something we'll work on later. But you could definitely expect job costing in very early Q1 of 2023.
And just at the end as well, you'll get a survey as the webinar ends here. We'd love to hear from you. Was this useful? Was this valuable? We're hoping to do these, maybe every quarter. So let us know what you thought. What can we change? What can we add? What do you want to hear about from us? We'd love your feedback and really appreciate the time today.
Absolutely.
Big thank you to Mike and Sean for hosting this. Super excited about job costing. I know a lot of our customers are too, so really appreciate the walkthrough here. And To everyone that attended, thank you so much. We'll be in touch with questions that we didn't get to, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining.